Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Introduction to Family Peer Support Services. We are so pleased that you could come and be involved and take part in this webinar. Please take a moment to turn the volume on your computers up for the best listening ability. And if you would like to join us via audio conference, please dial call-in number 1-650-479-3207 and access code 666-328-193. And if you have any technical difficulties, please contact the host through the chat box. Thank you and enjoy. So, Managed Care Technical Assistance Center, also known as MCTAC, provides training and quality improvement strategies, and including business, organizational, and clinical practices to achieve the overall goal of preparing and assisting providers with a transition to Medicaid managed care. And here's the link to that, the website. CTAC, Community Technical Assistance Center's goal is to improve outcomes for families, adults, and children with a focus on supporting agencies to integrate both efficient business practices and effective clinical and support practices. And again, the website is there. So CTAC and MCTAC work collaboratively with these partners to offer you guidance rich with different types of expertise. And we want to highlight especially Families Together as the facilitator of today's webinar. So our presenters for today, Susan Berger, and Susan is the Director of Family Peer Advocate Credentialing and Workforce Development. Wayne Gurnick, who is the Division Director of Child and Family Community-Based and Residential Programs at the Pederson Krag Center. Eileen, Executive Director of Long Island Families Together. And we have Ann Cumberger as from CTAC, and she's with NYU. Unfortunately, Paige Pierce couldn't be with us today, so I will be covering for her. Our agenda for today, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Susan.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, as Jerry said, I'm Susan Berger, and I am really excited to be here today and for the opportunity to partner with CTAC on this webinar. Looking at the participant list, there are many of you online who are from different systems and different regions across the state, and that is just what we were hoping for. As one of the first family peer advocates in New York State, it always amazes me how much this little service that families first identified has grown. So welcome to the webinar, Introducing Family Peer Support Services. I'm not sure, but I think we might have won the prize for most unimaginative webinar name of the year. Hopefully our presentation will be more inspiring than our name promises. Our goal here today is to introduce you to Family Peer Support Services and answer any questions you may have about what the service is and the role of the Family Peer Advocate who provides the service. After some general information about Family Peer Support Services, we will hear the perspective of a provider and a family member who, after receiving services, went on to become a Family Peer Advocate. We hope that this will help you get a sense of the real-life application of the services that we're going to be discussing. And finally, we'll talk about how Family Peer Support Services fit into the changes in the service delivery that's coming into New York State with Medicaid managed care. And we're going to go through this, and then we'll have time for questions at the end for you to ask. And you guys can use the chat box to ask those questions. So let's see. So, you know, Paige was scheduled to do this part of the presentation, so, and Jerry generously agreed to step in for Paige. I don't think Jerry needs a whole lot of introduction. She has a long history providing family support services directly to families, as well as working in the system as a partner at Miss Silver Institute to bring family voice to the work that they do at CTAC and MCTAC. Jerry also is president of the board of Families Together in New York State. So I'm going to pass the baton figuratively and literally to Jerry. Here we go. Okay, Jerry.
All righty. So thank you, Susan, for that wonderful introduction. It is really a pleasure to be presenting on the history of family peer support services today. As someone who has been involved in this movement for 20 years at least, I'm just honored to be able to do it. The family support movement is a system, and it began in the late 1980s. Families who were unhappy with the lack of community-based services for families and the outcomes for children with mental health and behavioral health challenges started to organize with the hope of getting more effective services for their family and all families across the country. These grassroots leaders from across the nation got together, most of the time meeting in each other's homes, and in 1989 formed the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, a family-run not-for-profit organization whose mission is to represent the voice of families. Today, the Federation of Families links more than 120 chapters and state organizations across the country who focus on issues of children and youth with emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs and their families. Taking the lead from the Federation of Families in 1993, the late Jenny Wood, New York State's first statewide family peer advocate, gathered a small group of family members from across the state with the goal of forming a family-run organization for New York. After 2 years of work in 1995, Families Together in New York State was born. So where is family support now? Today, Families Together in New York State has 11 chapters statewide and is a strong voice for families raising children with social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health challenges in all the child-serving systems. And we support the work of agencies across the state providing family peer support services. We also do systems advocacy. Families Together in New York State was instrumental in the fight for Timothy's Law, and we are currently an active partner in the Raise the Age campaign. And we are represented on many committees and initiatives doing cross-systems work. Families Together in New York State also has a variety of other programs working directly with families and family support programs. Through the Office of Mental Health, we have 10 parent advisors across New York State, and our staff manages the Family Peer Advocate credential and coordinates the parent empowerment training, which I was one of the original contributors to that training. Finally, family support services support a cross-systems vision. Family peer advocates reach across systems to serve families as they navigate on behalf of their child. Although family support started as a mental health initiative, it has grown tremendously to include families needing services in all systems, including juvenile justice, child welfare, OASIS, education, developmental disabilities, and physical health. Funding for family peer support has also grown and is now funded by many of the child-serving systems across the state, including direct contacts with juvenile justice, OPWDD, and state hospitals. Family peer support services are provided by family peer advocates. Statewide, there are now more than 400 advocates who are trained and working in the system, over 200 who have gone on to earn their family peer support credentials. And as Susan will discuss later in this webinar, with family peer support, We are poised to be a service that is reimbursable under Medicaid managed care, and a credential will be required for billing purposes. Family peer support services can be a standalone service, working on its own program. But as you will hear, it's very effective working in partnership with other services and can enhance families' engagement and partnerships with other services. Outcome data is not robust at this time, but it is growing in the field of family peer support in New York State and across the nation.
So, thanks, Jerry. So what exactly is family peer support? And I'm going to just, there we go, okay. As a movement, family peer support has worked hard to develop a set of services that will meet the support needs of families in the system. Family support is very responsive to the needs of families, and traditionally has taken a kind of whatever it takes approach. Putting that into words as a formal definition was the work of the 10 parent advisors and family support stakeholders across the state. They worked very hard to preserve the flavor of family support while also providing a structure and description to this service that keeps it flexible. I've included a handout of the full original definition, so I'm not going to go over it piece by piece. And you, if you haven't already, you should be able to download that. But there are a few things that were changed when it was written into the proposed state plan amendment, and I'm going to take a moment to highlight those. The definition itself has been broadened to include families caring for or raising a child who is experiencing social, emotional, developmental, medical, substance use, and or behavioral challenges, adding children with medical and substance use challenges. As family support workers, we're really already working cross systems with families. It's good to now have it officially in writing in the definition that hopefully will be in the state plan amendment. Along with broadening the systems that are served by family support, so that has also been defined more broadly and clarified. Another area that's been clarified is the definition of family. So family is now defined as the primary caregiving unit and is inclusive of a wide diversity of families in our culture. So it says that families include a birth, foster, adoptive, or self-created unit of people residing together with significant attachment to the individual, consisting of adults and or children, with adults performing the duties of parenthood, caregiving for the child or children, even if the individual is living outside the home. So really, in short, families can be anyone that is living together or performing parental duties as long as that particular group decides that they're a family unit. So it's really, you know, so inclusive. There are two additional points that I think it is important to make here. The first is that for the first time, there's a statewide requirement and specific training around the provision of family peer support services. So family peer support services are to be provided by trained and credentialed family peer advocates. Right now, the family peer advocate credential is strongly suggested, but not required. And as we move forward, it will be required, as Geraldine said, for billing purposes. I'll be speaking a little later in the webinar about the current and future requirements for the credential, and there's also a webinar scheduled on November 19th that's going to focus specifically on family peer advocate credentialing. Flexibility in the family peer advocate role is not only evident in the type of services we provide, but also in who we provide it to, and also in ways that we provide it. So I would imagine that there will be some changes and additional restrictions as we transition to Medicaid managed care, especially around other face-to-face options. So right now, you can provide service in the family's home and in the community, office, telephone, or Skype. But I think that probably will change to be able to meet Medicaid requirements, which, you know, may not include all of those. There are 6 main elements of family peer support services, and I've listed them out here. And that's really kind of under the umbrella of these 6 elements is where family support magic kind of really happens. In some ways, they're very self-explanatory, but there's a real lot that we can accomplish within these 6 elements. I know that the service categories seem self-explanatory, but when I think back about what was important to me in my journey, I needed information. I was a teacher at the time that my child was diagnosed, but I had no idea what the doctors and mental health professionals were talking about. I got a list of diagnoses and letters: PBD, NOS, personality disorder, anxiety disorder, psychosis, NOS, and at the time my son was only 4. I was totally blown away, as you can imagine, and peer family support was really what directed me through this maze. It helped me through outreach and information, mostly in the form of phone calls at first, but then I went on to attend support groups. I felt listened to, and my inner advocate was nurtured with skill development and parenting, partnership, education, and what services were available for my child. And I have to honestly say that I would not have been successful, nor do I believe my son would be, without the help I got under the umbrella of these 6 simple services. Family support services help families in general to engage and sometimes re-engage in the system and teaches them how to navigate it. Also, through bridging and transition support, it can help prepare families to move on from services set up to navigate the system on their own. And the element of providing family-driven practice is the perfect segue into the next slide, which outlines the principles of family peer support. I'm sure that these principles listed here are all principles that look very familiar to you. I know I've seen them in different forms on many of the documents that guide the work we all do in the human services field. But these are specific ones that we use in family peer support. We think a lot about principles and how to infuse them into our work, and our role in promoting family-driven practice in these, we use these principles as a guide when we think about family-driven practice. It's our goal to partner with professionals from different systems and parents to make sure that families needing services are supported under the umbrella of these principles as they are given the help that they need. Reviewing the principles, it's hard for me to pick out just 1 or 2, as they all resonate strongly for me as a parent and then also as a family peer advocate. This is really the way that we do our work and what we think about and what we train on in family peer support. So next I want to talk a little bit about what family peer advocacy actually, what the credential requirements are. So you see kind of who is becoming a family peer advocate. So these are the current requirements that we have. As we prepare for Medicaid managed care, they most likely will change, but for now, they remain as written. There, as you can see on the bottom, there's a direct link to the 2015 Family Peer Advocate Credential application. At the end of 2015 or the beginning, early 2016, there'll be an updated application on the website, but the link will remain the same. So we're looking to get that up mid-December, and then we'll be accepting the new application starting January 1st. Moving forward with the credential, we're going to need to think about kind of dividing it into two levels. So it's our goal to make a level 1 or provisional training and credentialing requirement accessible enough so that it's possible for family members with lived experience to get a level 1 provisional credential even before they get employed. The new requirement will most likely include some online training and some sort of level 1, level 2 credential. So we're really looking to be able to get people online so when they start working, they have a credential so the agency they start with can start billing right away, and then over the next 18 months, when they are employed, they'll be able to continue their training and continue to get experience, and at the end of 18 months, we'll be able to apply for a level 2 or a full credential. So most of the requirements here are pretty standard, sort of what you would expect for a family peer advocate or peer advocate credential. But there's one that I'd like to highlight, and that's the lived experience bullet, the first bullet on the top. This is the one that I think sets our service apart from other supportive services. So this is the lived experience circle of support. So as you can see, there's lived experience in the middle, and then kind of all everything that lived experience brings to the service of family peer support. And people often ask, why is lived experience important, why it matters, and couldn't we just have equally competent and nice people who've not used the system, providing support to families who are raising children with different challenges. So why does it need to be a peer is the question. And I've given this question much thought over the years, as I'm sure others who are much smarter than I have. And it seems to come down to this. Family peer advocates and family members share an experience that is felt on both a practical and emotional level. It's something like what I would imagine veterans of war or cancer survivors share. It's just this immediate understanding that requires very few words. And family peer advocates use this connection based on lived experience to heighten trust with families, and also to deepen engagement, not only with them as a family support service provider, but also to help them to deepen engagement with other services that the family is using. Family peer advocates look at parents through the eyes of someone who's been there and uses that perspective to help activate and support and encourage the family, and also to offer hope that things can get better. For a family peer advocate, the total focus is on that parent and caregiver, with the goal of strengthening them to be able to partner with different service providers and to be as effective a parent and advocate for their child as they can be. So as I mentioned, the parent of a child with who's actually on the autism spectrum, and I can say for me that finding family peer support was like coming home. I felt and immediately understood and appreciated and not blamed or judged. So I could kind of get right to the real work of getting what my family and what my child needed. So that's in my opinion, and the overall impact of lived experience and through lived experience, family peer support services. So, you know, I think that there's a connection that helping parents engage and become an active partner with their providers leads to better outcomes for the child. Family peer advocates are able to use their lived experience along with their training to help families. In family support, the focus is completely on the parent on behalf of the child, and this strong focus helps us to reduce guilt about needing more help than can be offered in other services where the parent is considered kind of a collateral, and helps parents to feel comfortable to ask questions, try again, and learn the skills that they need to be able to work most effectively with their child and with other services. The impact of family peer support services has been mostly anecdotal at this point, but I know for myself and other families I've spoken to, this list highlights a few important changes that they've felt. Currently, there's very little data on family support, but more and more it's being collected in New York State and across the country. And in the next few slides, I'm going to outline a little bit of what we have seen so far. So this is really a list of nationally some studies that have been done to measure the effectiveness of family peer support services. And one of the handouts that you can download goes into these services, studies, in a lot more detail. So, you know, you can take a look at them, but really the research base is growing in family peer support services, especially as more and more states are including this service as part of their array of Medicaid-funded services. I think at this point there are more than 14 states that are doing that. The work that family peer support does with parents has been shown to help in a number of ways that are tied to child improvement. So I think in general, we're kind of getting there with data. New York State is also working on collecting data on family peer support services. We have the Family Assessment of Needs and Strengths, or the FANS, which is being utilized in some programs. We have the FPSS, the Family Assessment of Care Survey, and I also included a link to work being done at the NYU Child Study Center's IDEA Center. And this work is going to continue as family peer support service becomes a billable state plan service and as the state transitions into Medicaid managed care. So next up, we have a provider perspective. We thought it would be helpful for you to hear how the providers have kind of viewed the system and what their arc of starting the system and where they are now is. So Wayne Dernick from the Pederson Krag Center has put together some of his thoughts of, you know, how he views family support. So, Wayne?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I'd just like to add some thoughts, again, as a provider. The Pederson Krag Center is an agency on Long Island, large mental health center, and I've been with the Division of Children and Family Services for 20 years. And so have some experience working with family support. And have evolved over the years in working with family peer advocates. The first slide is really just some thoughts about what folks' reactions to this may be, and what, from my experience, a lot of professional staff, providers, can have reticence, can have hesitation about embracing the work of family peer support. And these are some of the things that, I've come across in not only my initial reactions first coming to this work, but also as we've engaged different programs into family support, what are common reactions? And as social workers, mental health workers, counselors, oftentimes there is a fear of losing some of the ownership of the expertise, fearing that having to share this, so to speak, share the work, share the effectiveness of the work, can be a barrier for folks to embracing it. And I think it's important to understand that there are barriers and obstacles that staff may have to work through in order to best work with family peer advocates. Our experience has shown us, and I'll go into some of the experience that we have, that all of these things are initial fears and do not actually come to pass. There is definitely not an us versus them feeling, and that's what a lot of staff feel, that parents are coming in to advocate with other parents, and that naturally it's going to be an us versus them or against the provider. And quite frankly, it's the opposite. There's a synergy in the relationship, there's a synergy in perspective that really creates a much more powerful working relationship. And so these fears that work will be harder working with somebody else, when we have parent advocates that are understanding and identifying obstacles and barriers that families may face to reach their goals and to meet the needs of their children. When you have a partner that is identifying those issues through their work with families and prioritizing needs and being able to voice what they want, the work becomes easier. The effective outcomes become greater. The feel of family voice and that the care is really driven by the family and the needs of their children and youth becomes just so much stronger. And sometimes it's just hard for change in general, that people have sometimes a hard time looking at things differently and changing the way they do things. The early adopters in the division here at Pederson Krag was our Family Support Services program. We have a family support program that has family peer advocates that we have called over the years family support workers that work with the families in educational ways and supportive ways in negotiating and navigating various systems. And so we were very early in the adoption of family support in developing that program. And that was in the early 90s, actually, with the advent of the National Federation. And I came on board in 1995 when Families Together was established. So this goes way back. The Home and Community-Based Services Waiver Program has an aspect of that program that works with family support. That is one of the component services. And so we have a very large waiver program that works as a team, and the family support workers work as part of that team. And that program has been going on since probably 1998, I'm sorry. So again, another program that we find great success with family peer support partners in that program, really working with the families on developing their goals, and it really brings a very good complement to the program. We've moved beyond programs that revolve necessarily around family support to really trying to integrate family support into all of our programs. Family Bonds is a program that we developed to work collaboratively with Long Island Families Together and Parent to Parent, a family support program on Long Island, to work together in a collaboration and a partnership to bring family support to the families in our community residence programs. We have 2 community residence programs. That program, we sit at a table and weekly and work together towards making sure that we are family-driven, that we're focusing on the needs of the family, that the family voice is at the forefront, and that has really transformed our community residential programming and really has created a whole new type of approach to the work we have with families. Our home-based crisis intervention program, the model of that in New York State are crisis workers / case managers. A number of years ago, we identified we need family support here. When a family is facing a mental health crisis with their child for the very first time, they have no experience with the system, the worker's working on crisis stabilization. But what about everything else? What about helping that family through the experience? What about helping that family educate in the system? And so we integrated family support, a family peer advocate, into the staffing of that program. And that family peer advocate is the link to all families and works with all of our caseworkers on behalf of the parent. And so we're trying to, we've gotten to the point where any program that we have, we're looking to have parent advocacy, family peer support involved because it makes sense, it creates a better relationship with families, and ultimately better outcomes and shorter lengths of stays in programs, which is what we want. And so any program that we have, we're looking to, again, integrate family peer support as much as possible. Moving on to the next slide. What we would like to, what I'd like to share is, again, that a lot of the initial concerns that I think people should be aware of to address obstacles and barriers in their staff and in their programs, to be aware of those things and address those, is to know that through our experience, through, over 20 years of experience in really growing our family peer support involvement in our programs, it strengthens the communication and collaboration with families. The work increases engagement and participation in services. It identifies the barriers and obstacles and addresses those in probably the most effective way. Families will talk to families differently, and that link with the provider is critical to being able to do that work in a more effective and actually timely way. And the trust is very important. Families come to a program with a history, and oftentimes that history, unfortunately, can be negative. And so having that family peer support worker being a member of a treatment team, a provider team, and having that family see that that model works and that there is mutual respect with providers and families and that trust can be developed is critical. That establishment of a partnership between the family peer support and the provider establishes that partnership with the services and the family in a way that providers, I believe in my experience, cannot do alone. And then moving forward, it promotes and strengthens family self-efficacy empowerment, which leads to the outcomes. If the family is empowered and they believe they can do it, with the use of the family peer support and with the clinical or other service expertise of the providers, that partnership and collaboration brings forth those outcomes. And, again, Susan said a lot about anecdotal outcomes. I'm hoping to express, the value that I have seen in the services, but again, we see this on an everyday basis with families and particularly youth and the outcomes that we have. However, for just some concrete examples of how this has helped us, our home-based crisis intervention program, when we put that person in, that family peer support person in, we were able to increase our capacity of service without changing the funding, without changing the model, because the family peer support worker took on roles of the crisis worker that is best done by the family peer support worker, and then could increase the ability of that caseworker to do some of the crisis work and casework that should be done in that role. So we were able to increase, to some degree, the number of families that we were able to address and to help through. And with the community residence program, our work with family peer support made us focus more on the work in the community, the child's time in the home, and moved towards more of that partnership with the family peer support, the family voice. And our New York State Office of OMH regional office, one of the representatives has told us a number of times that their observation, looking at our CARES data, looking at outcome data, comparative to other programs that may not have the family peer support involvement, that they see the effect of the length of stay shortening. And they've seen the positive outcomes in the work that's done. And that's directly feedback that we've gotten from representatives from our office. So I encourage you to really look at this as a way to get better outcomes, as a way to help staff feel more effective and successful, and really changing the culture of the work that we do and continuing that movement. I have personally seen the benefits of this, and I encourage you to, if you haven't embraced it, to begin to embrace it and to begin to bring this further into your programs and to your systems. And I'm just very happy to be able to speak on this today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Wayne. And hearing your perspective really, makes me really feel good about the service that we provide, not only as it helps families do better, but also it helps the practice of the professionals that we're working alongside of. So next up is Eileen Tablet, and she's going to be talking about the family perspective. And I think she has a particularly unique perspective because she's went from being a family member to being a family peer advocate. And that's how, that's how most of our, almost all of our family peer advocates start. So I'm going to pass the baton to Eileen. And
hi, everybody. This is Eileen. I like to introduce myself by saying the initials after my name are MOM, because it was my role as a mom that prepared me for the work that I do today. A few years ago, I was asked to share the story of my family's journey of having a child with mental health issues at a legislative breakfast. And I didn't realize it then until that day, actually, how powerful my story was. And the response was overwhelming. And in fact, I still have people that come up to me and tell me that they heard my story and it had an impact, and they've shared it with a lot of people over the years. Since our family was built through adoption, I had started an adoption support group to help parents with some of the challenges in that arena. But now I had a new dimension to my experience when one of our children presented with some mental health challenges. So having a child experiencing social, emotional, behavioral, mental health challenges is scary. There's just no other way to put it. It can be terrifying, and there's a lot of fear involved. You feel like a failure as a parent when you are not able to control your child when you're in public situations and everyone else's child is doing what they're supposed to do and your child isn't. It's embarrassing because it reflects on you, or at least you think it reflects on you. There's a lot of anxiety because you don't, at the outset, really understand what's happening and what you're dealing with. And there's also a lot of rejection, not only of you in isolation, but also of your child. It's been my experience that a lot of people didn't want their children around my child, and that's kind of hurtful. So I definitely had a lot of fear when I was entering the system. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a children's mental health system. That's how clueless I was. We had case management eventually, and when my child needed higher level of care, I actually turned down those services. We were eligible for waiver services, and when I heard 5 people would be coming to my home on a weekly basis, I said no, thank you. Actually, I should have said yes at that time because my child needed the services, but I just did not know what my life would look like and what they would think of our home and our family. So there really is a lot of hesitation. The way family peer support services work for my family is basically it helped me to come out of my shell, to come out of a place of fear and more into a place of strength. And that was all pretty much accomplished through my parent advocate that worked with me, just helping me to navigate, teaching me about the system, what it offers, what mental illness is, and how to really start to become an advocate instead of just, a bystander in the situations that were occurring in my child's life. It had a great result. For our family, the ultimate impact, feelings of failure started to be replaced with feelings of adequacy and empowerment, like, okay, I can do this, and I am doing a good job given my circumstances. Embarrassment turns to understanding because my parent advocate had that lived experience, which you keep hearing that term. She had been through things also, and she understood what I was feeling. And there's a lot of isolation with families that have children with a mental health challenge. And your family doesn't understand, your friends don't understand, to finally have someone who understands what you're going through. The anxiety, that heightened state of what's going to happen next, every time the phone rings, is it the school, is it another parent? It starts to be replaced with calm as you know that there are answers for you, there's help out there, and you're not alone. And the rejection replaced with acceptance, because now you have a person or a team, depending on the program you're in, around you that's able to embrace you and accept you and your family and make you feel that you're not that odd or strange or on the peripheral as you thought you were. I've worked with families for the last 6 years that have all different types of issues, and trust is a huge issue for parents because we don't particularly want to tell our story to total strangers, but you actually have to do that in order to get the services that you need. So I, for example, and once that trust is built, you really can move further along with that family. We had a family who adopted children from foster care, and they were considering putting the children back in the system. They didn't tell anyone on the clinical staff that piece of information. They told me. We had the common thread of adoption, but there was also a comfort level. And as a result of me knowing that, I was able to bring it to the team, and we made some changes, and we really intensified the services, and that family had a very happy ending. And I'm happy to say that they're still happy. And that's part of why I chose this field of work, because when you go through and start to come out on the other side, you want to help others to do the same. And I think that's very, very important to just instill hope. The way I accomplish the work is the way many parent advocates do, support, just letting them know, I've been there, I've done that, I'm still doing it, still going through issues. It's the lived experience which begins to build the trust. Engagement, I am a credentialed family peer advocate, and in the training you learn how to engage families and keep them engaged in the process. And again, the lived experience is critical, and that's the bridge, I believe, that keeps the families from the place of fear going into just really using all the services that you have to offer them. You partner with them. We were doing wraparound with the families, and they have a slogan, do for, do with, and cheer on. So you let them know you're not alone. Some things you do for them in the beginning, then as they become empowered, they start to do more things to advocate for themselves, their child, and their family, and then you cheer them on. Parenting skills is critical, and this is what saved me and helped me to do that crossover. And I've worked with many families that need help. Some families need help setting boundaries. Another family may need help getting the siblings back on board. A lot of parents love that we all love our children, but a lot of times you wind up not liking them. And I have a little personal mission that I try to, show them, let's turn our hearts back to our children and let's bring fun back into the family. And that's work that I'm able to share also, the successes that happened with my family. And then transitioning back to the community is a huge piece because this helps them come back into a place of normalcy. When they've been given skills, everybody's learning how to regulate and speak with each other and, access the services, and your children are getting older as you're going through this process and gaining maturity. And it really is a win-win. I find my work very rewarding. I see it as an opportunity to make positive difference in the life of families. Family support absolutely was a turning point for me as a mom and a parent and my family, and I'm just happy to share my experience and offer the services to other families. Thank you very much, and I will pass it along to Anne.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, this has just been really wonderful to hear from people with different perspectives about the service. And I want to share a very little bit with everyone about where we're headed as all of these changes are taking place in the children's service system. Family Peer Support Services is set to become a Medicaid state plan service. So that application will go into the Center for Medicaid Services sometime in the next few months. And assuming all of that is approved, Family Support Services will become a billable service. For many of you, that may give you an opportunity to, participate more in doing this kind of work, either by working in collaboration with an existing family care support program or by hiring family members who serve on your staff and work in your program. So that's really great news, and we have a lot of details that are still emerging about exactly how that's going to work, but it does stand to allow us to increase access to this really great service. Family Peer Support Services can also continue to be provided through non-Medicaid funding streams. Right now, many of these programs that you're hearing about are funded through aid to localities funding and grants from various partners. Some from the state level, some at the county level, and some foundation support, and even some individual programs coming up with the resources to provide this service. And I think the reason that the resources have been forthcoming is really speaks to what Wayne talked about, which is the idea that this service is helpful to families, but it's also helpful to those programs who are trying to meet various objectives of their own. So I do think another thing that's important to point out is that Family Peer Support Services in some communities is sort of a standalone program, and they help families deal with all different kinds of issues and access services in many different parts of the system, but the program itself is, it's kind of its own program. That will continue to happen, but more and more as we move into a more integrated approach to providing services, we're going to be looking for those partnerships where family support providers are working really closely with other providers to help families make the best use of the services that are out there. So I would encourage all of you on the call who are providers to reach out to family peer support providers in your community and start that conversation. And likewise, the family support programs, reach out to all kinds of different providers to think about how your work with families can really benefit the families that they serve. As we move forward, I like to point out that, we talk a lot about, and Eileen really shared beautifully, and Susan also, the benefit of this service for families. And the research really is emerging that shows that there really is some positive impact on families. There also is a real benefit to providers, and I think Wayne addressed that very well today. If you're, for example, a residential provider and you partner with family support, that translation from the residential program into the community can go much more smoothly. The family partners know the community really well. They can work with the family on an ongoing basis to help them get settled and connected to services. If on the other end of the system, when we're looking to reduce presentations in emergency rooms, for example, if family peer support services can get involved early with the family and do that outreach and engagement, hopefully we can connect families to services that will allow them to prevent things from rising to the level where they need to go to an emergency room, or at least help the family find a crisis program or some other program that will better meet their needs in a more timely manner. As we move into managed care, we've already heard from a lot of managed care organizations that they're really interested in peer services in general, adult peer services, youth peer services, and these family peer services that we're talking about. And one of the reasons that they're interested in it is that families are really satisfied with these services, and the services have been shown to really have a positive impact on satisfaction, on length of stay and outcomes, and on cost. And so in order to leave a few minutes for questions, I want to stop my comments there, and Sherry Burton is going to help facilitate some of the question and answers.
So thank you, Ann. Okay. So thank you, Ann, for passing it over to me. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the participants. Again, Ann, Wayne, Eileen, and Susan, job well done. And we have a few questions that came up. The first question, someone wanted to know where are the chapters, and I typed in, I told her that she could get the information on the Families Together website. But she wanted to know specifically which one is closest to Syracuse. So, Ann, do you know which one that it would be?
Yes, Sherry, that's the Family Support in Central New York chapter, and I chatted to all participants the link to the Families Together website where they can find the chapter that's closest to them.
Right, so did I. Okay, thanks. All right, then another question came from Amanda Donarero, and her question was, does the facilitator need to be a family member, or can it be a professional who receives training?
I can take that, Jerry. If Amanda means facilitator means family peer advocate, the family peer advocate, the requirement is that that person have lived experience navigating systems for and parenting a child with a variety of different challenges. And, you know, we had mentioned mental health, substance use, medical, developmental disabilities, behavioral challenges. So it does need to be, and is part of the requirements, that the person who is the parent, family peer advocate, does have that lived experience piece. And if the person who is a professional also has lived experience, then they would be able to become a family peer advocate and get the credential if they were working in that role, or, you know, so they choose to work in that role.
Okay, thanks, Susan. The next question, will the parent advocates still be part of the foster care agencies, or will they become employees of a health entity under Medicaid managed care?
Well, I can kind of answer that again.
Okay.
I think that there are going to be many different ways that family peer advocates get into the system. So that might be one way through a health entity, but there'll be many different flexible employment arrangements.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, do family peer advocates only work with families whose children are under the age of 18?
Actually, that's a really good question. Moving forward, that it was only up to age 18, but moving forward, it's going to be expanded through the state plan amendment up to age 21. So that will be through all the systems up to age 21.
All right. Someone wanted to know, does OASIS recognize the family peer advocate certification? Sorry.
The the family peer advocate credential, I think OASIS is moving forward with their own specific credential, but I think that in general, we'll be talking about and moving, as we move forward, whether or not there is reciprocity between the two systems. So the family peer advocate will be able to work with families in systems who have substance use issues, and we'll see whether or not OASIS as a system recognizes our family peer advocate credential. But they are, at this point, moving forward to develop a separate certification.
Okay, so this is the last question. Someone wanted to know, when will the change to serving up to age 21 occur?
I think that when the state plan amendment is approved and those services through the state plan amendment go into effect, then we will be officially working with children and youth up to the age of 21.
Okay, thanks so much, Susan. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank all the participants who got on. We know that, time is very tight, but we really appreciate you taking the time to be on the webinar. And we also want to let you know that on November 19th, which is a Thursday from 12 to 1 p.m., we will be also doing a webinar. Susan Berger will be doing the webinar in reference to the Family Peer Advocate credentialing. So if you're available, please sign up for the webinar, and we would love to have you.
Thank you, everyone.
Here's our contact information. Feel free to contact us. And again, we thank you. Have a great afternoon.